I want you to think about the last time you woke up from a dream that felt, just so intensely real, like so deeply unsettling that it basically haunted your entire day.
Oh, yeah, that is the worst feeling.
Right. You know the feeling. You're standing in your kitchen, you're pouring your morning coffee, going through the mundane motions of your routine, but your mind is just still trapped in that shadowy alternate reality.
Yeah, where the colors were too bright or the conversations were slightly off.
Exactly. And the people you thought you knew acted like total strangers. Now, I want you to imagine that feeling weaponized. Like, what if a movie could artificially induce that exact psychological hangover?
Right.
What if the movie you were watching was actively, deliberately watching you watch it?
I mean, that is the ultimate cinematic magic trick, isn't it? The idea that a piece of art isn't just this passive object projected on a screen, but a psychological mirror,
Yeah.
angled perfectly to reflect your own unacknowledged anxieties right back into your eyes.
Mm.
It's thrilling, but it is profoundly terrifying.
Which brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We are peeling back the layers of one of the most misunderstood, endlessly debated, and frankly baffling works of modern cinema.
Baffling is the right word for it.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about Stanley Kubrick's final 1999 film, Eyes Wide Shut, alongside its really brilliant 1926 source material, which is Arthur Schnitzler's novella, Dream Story.
It really remains the absolute definition of a cinematic labyrinth. I mean, people are still getting completely lost in it a quarter of a century later.
Because they went in looking for the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So let's unpack the stack of sources we're working with today to kind of find the right path through that maze.
Let's do it.
We are pulling from comprehensive summaries of that original Austrian novella. We're also breaking down this incredibly dense, multi-layered analytical essay by Nick Dobrinsky. It's called Eyes Wide Shut, hidden in plain sight, and it meticulously catalogs all the film's embedded
It's
symbols.
a fantastic piece of writing.
So detailed. And perhaps most fascinating of all, we have this deep dive archival document from Reddit that lists the literal day-by-day post-production notes made in the editing room.
Right. Immediately following Stanley Kubrick's sudden death.
Yeah. And by synthesizing these specific texts, we get to completely bypass that superficial, erotic thriller marketing campaign that just confused so many audiences and critics back in 1999.
Oh, totally. The studio sold a steamy romance, but Kubrick delivered an autopsy of the human soul.
That is exactly what it is. And the promise of today's deep dive is this. By the time we finish this conversation, you will never watch a movie or, look at a Christmas tree, a hallway mirror, or even a neighborhood toy store the exact same way again.
Definitely not.
We are stepping into a mind-bending slipstream of secret societies, psychological shadows, and meta-cinematic puzzles designed to trap you. But, to really understand what Kubrick did, we have to start with what he altered.
Right, the source material.
Yeah, Arthur Schnitzler's Traumnovelle, or Dream Story, was published in 1926. It's set in early 20th century Vienna, but specifically it takes place during Mardi Gras.
And that setting is the engine of the entire novella.
Yeah.
Because Carnival, or Mardi Gras, is historically this pre-Lenten festival.
All right.
So in 1920s Vienna, it was this socially sanctioned window for the release of base urges before the mandatory fasting and abstinence of Lent.
Yeah, the streets were filled with heavy drinking, feasting, masquerades.
Exactly. It was a period of permitted transgressive behavior. Everyday citizens wore masks to mock authority figures, collapse class boundaries, and just engage in exaggerated sexual acts without facing the usual social consequences. The mask gives you permission to be your darkest self.
So our protagonist in the book is Fridolin. He's the successful 35-year-old doctor, comfortably wealthy, living with his beautiful wife, Albertina, and their young daughter. And from the source summaries, the plot of this 1926 book maps almost perfectly onto the 1999 film.
Yeah, the structural skeleton is identical. I mean, it kicks off with this devastating mutual confession of sexual fantasies.
Right.
Fridolin and Albertina are in their safe bourgeois home, and Albertina confesses that during a recent vacation in Denmark, she experienced a really vivid, consuming sexual fantasy about a young Danish military officer.
Which is just a brutal thing to hear.
She literally admits she was ready to abandon her husband and child for a stranger. So Fridolin, stung by this, retaliates by admitting he was intensely attracted to a young, naked girl he saw on a beach during that same trip.
It just instantly shatters their illusion of a safe monogamous marriage. Like the floor just falls out from under Fridolin's ego.
He is completely unmoored.
Yeah.
And in that state of psychological fragility, he's called out into the night to attend the deathbed of a patient.
Right.
The patient has already passed, But the man's daughter, Marianne, suddenly throws herself at Fridolin, professing her undying love for him right there next to her father's corpse.
So intense.
Very. Fridolin rejects her, flees into the streets of Vienna, and begins this surreal nocturnal wandering. He's tempted by a young prostitute named Missy, but ultimately refuses her as well. Then, the pivotal moment, he runs into an old medical school dropout friend named Nachtigall, who is now a piano player.
Then Nachtigall is the skeleton key here, right? He is the one who gives Fridolin the password to the secret society.
Exactly. He tells Fridolin that he's been hired to play piano blindfolded at a secret high society orgy outside the city.
Wow.
So Fridolin, desperate to reclaim some sense of power and sexual agency after his wife's confession, demands the password. He procures a mask and a monk's costume from this shady theatrical shop, and he infiltrates this private masquerade ball.
And inside, he finds just a terrifying world. Naked women wearing only masks, engaged in bizarre, ritualistic sexual activities with costumed men who clearly hold immense power.
Right, but Fridolin is quickly exposed as an interloper.
Because he doesn't know the unspoken rules, he doesn't belong to their social class, mask or no mask.
He is essentially put on trial by this cabal. But before they can punish him, one of the masked women at the party steps forward and announces she will sacrifice herself to save him.
Which is wild.
He is stripped of his costume and banished, warned never to investigate what he saw. When he finally returns home, emotionally battered, Albertina wakes up and casually tells him about a nightmare she just had.
Oh, this part.
Yeah. In her dream, she made love to that Danish officer, laughing while she watched Fridolin get tortured and crucified.
I mean, that is just a brutal thing to hear from the person you love most. It's the ultimate emasculation.
It sends him entirely over the edge.
Yeah.
The whole next day is a paranoid descent into the underworld as he tries to retrace his steps. Nachtigall, the piano player, is mysteriously abducted.
Right.
Fridolin goes back to the costume shop and finds the owner prostituting his own teenage daughter. He returns to the mansion but is handed a threatening warning note. He frantically searches for the streetwalker Missy to try and find some basic human connection, but she's vanished.
He even breaks into the city morgue, right?
Yes, he's convinced that a newly arrived corpse is the woman who sacrificed herself for him at the party. But looking at the lifeless body, he can't even be sure it's her.
It's just a total collapse of reality, and it ends with him dragging himself back to his apartment, finding his masquerade mask resting on the pillow next to his sleeping wife, and he just breaks down.
He completely loses it.
He confesses the entire harrowing ordeal. And Albertina, much like Alice in the film, tells him that the reality of one night doesn't negate the reality of their whole lives. They greet the morning light with their daughter. So that is the anatomy of the dream story.
It is a masterful exploration of the Austrian psyche between the wars. But, look at what Stanley Kubrick does with this text.
Yeah.
He takes this very specific 1920s Viennese Jewish Mardi Gras narrative, uproots it completely, and drops it into the freezing, hyper-modern landscape of New York City in 1999. And the most significant change, he shifts the season from Mardi Gras to Christmas.
Which is huge. That seasonal shift changes the entire ideological framework. Like, if Mardi Gras is about the release of primal, fleshly urges, the American Christmas is the absolute zenith of capitalist consumerism.
Exactly.
It's the season of buying, of acquiring, of displaying wealth.
The Dobrinsky essay spends a lot of time on this visual landscape. Notice how Christmas trees are aggressively present in almost every single scene of the movie. They're in apartments, hospital rooms, lobbies, street corners.
They are overwhelming.
They really are.
Sure.
But Dobrinsky argues they aren't just there to look festive. They are deeply subversive symbols. The custom of decorating evergreen trees has ancient pagan origins. Historically, the evergreen tree, because it stays alive and erect through the dead of winter, was a phallic symbol of fertility worship.
Right.
The decorative balls and tinsel symbolize testicles and semen, while the Christmas wreath, which you also see everywhere, is a yonic symbol representing a woman's vaginal opening, often adorned with a red bow symbolizing the blood of menstruation or childbirth.
I have to say, looking at the giant, beautifully decorated evergreen currently sitting in my own living room, well, I'm feeling slightly violated.
It changes the vibe, doesn't it?
I'm going to have to do a lot of explaining to my family about why I can't look at the vintage ornaments the same way anymore. But, in the context of the film, that is brilliant and incredibly dark. Kubrick places Dr. Bill Harford, a man suffering from severe psychological impotence, completely emasculated by his wife's fantasy, into a literal forest of glowing, ancient symbols of male virility and fertility worship.
Yes.
He is surrounded by massive, illuminated phallic symbols while he wanders the streets feeling entirely inadequate.
It creates a visual mockery of his internal state. Christianity co-opted these symbols from the pagan winter festival celebrating Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. So Bill is walking through a landscape that is constantly celebrating a victory of light and fertility that he absolutely does not possess.
It makes me think of the structure of the story. Like, is this movie essentially a psychosexual version of A Christmas Carol?
The parallels are striking when you lay them out.
Think about it. Dr. Bill is Ebenezer Scrooge. He's this comfortably wealthy, arrogant, complacent man who thinks his life and his marriage are perfectly ordered ledgers. But then he is forcefully taken on a terrifying nighttime journey through alternate realities, encountering different figures who function like the ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
He sees the grieving daughter, the prostitute, the secret society. These encounters are designed to shake him out of his spiritual numbness and expose the rot underneath his wealth.
And it perfectly captures the agonizing duality of the holiday season itself. Think about the intense pressure you feel during the holidays. You have the cultural promise of idyllic family comfort and warmth, but it aggressively collides with extreme material temptation, financial pressure, status anxiety.
Totally.
It is a time of grotesque overconsumption masked as generosity.
And Bill's only defense mechanism is to consume. Whenever he's uncomfortable or threatened, he throws money at the problem. He constantly flashes his medical license like a VIP pass. He peels off crisp $100 bills for cab drivers, for prostitutes, for costume shop owners. He is trying to buy his way through a spiritual crisis.
But he remains entirely unfulfilled because you cannot purchase psychological resolution. The Christmas setting is Kubrick's deliberate code for capitalism and the commodification of human connection.
But okay, if this entire holiday setting is a deliberate code for consumption, what other secret codes did Kubrick embed into the literal language and set design of the film? Because the deeper we look into the Dobrinsky essay, the more we see that the dialogue and the camera angles are hiding their true meaning in plain sight. Let's start with the title itself, Eyes Wide Shut.
Right. It is a deliberate oxymoron, a physical impossibility. You cannot have your eyes wide and shut at the same time.
It's a metaphor for perception filters. It's about what we stare at directly without actually seeing. I mean, in the very first shot of the film, Alice, played by Nicole Kidman, casually shrugs off her black dress. We see a massive, beautiful movie star completely naked, but almost immediately the screen cuts to pitch black and the bold white title Eyes Wide Shut appears. It's as if Kubrick is mocking the audience right out of the gate, saying, you bought a ticket to see a sexy Hollywood thriller. You are staring right at the flesh, but you are completely blind to what this movie is actually about.
It is the ultimate misdirection. And that theme of blocked perception, of being asleep while your eyes are open, carries heavily into the film's dialogue. In 1999, critics relentlessly attacked the dialogue, calling it stilted, flat, and wooden.
The repetition is maddening when you first watch it. Bill constantly repeats the last few words of whatever someone just said to him. Like the streetwalker Domino asks him, would you like to come inside with me? And Bill just blankly repeats, come inside with you.
Right.
Later, his billionaire friend Victor Ziegler tells him a woman overdosed on heroin and coke, and Bill responds, heroin and coke. It sounds like a bad high school play.
But that is intentional. He is sleepwalking. He is trapped in a hypnagogic state, constantly repeating the words he's hearing because he is entirely unsure of his own reality. He's trying to anchor himself. But Kubrick also uses dialogue as a covert bridge to other literary works.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Yeah, there's a moment at Victor Ziegler's sterile, brightly lit Christmas party where a creepy, older Hungarian man named Sander Szavost is trying to seduce Alice while she drinks champagne. He leans in and says, don't you think one of the charms of marriage is that it makes deception a necessity for both parties?
Which is just an incredibly cynical, oily line.
And it is lifted almost word for word from Oscar Wilde's 1890 novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray. The original Wilde quote is, the one charm of marriage is that it makes a life of deception absolutely necessary for both parties. But notice the specific phrase, both parties.
Oh.
On the surface, Szavost means the two spouses deceiving each other. But in the structural architecture of the film, it applies to the two literal parties we see. Victor Ziegler's socially acceptable, brightly lit Christmas party and the dark, masked, occult orgy at the Somerton mansion.
Oh, that is a phenomenal detail. Two marriages, two parties, everything in the film exists in a state of doubling, which leads directly into the visual language of the film. The Dobrinsky essay spends pages discussing the concept of mise en abîme.
Mise en abîme is a French art term that translates to placing into the abyss. It refers to what we often call the Drost effect.
Like the mirrors.
Exactly. Imagine standing in an elevator with mirrors on opposite walls. You look into one mirror and see a reflection, but inside that reflection is the reflection of the mirror behind you, creating an infinite receding tunnel of images. It's a technique used to create a recursive, reflexive trap for the viewer's eye.
And Kubrick didn't just use this as a visual trick. He structurally built the timeline of the film like a mirror.
The mathematical precision is staggering. The theatrical cut of the film is exactly 160 minutes long. The climactic, terrifying mansion orgy sequence, the literal abyss of the film, begins exactly 70 minutes into the runtime.
Okay.
The sequence lasts for exactly 20 minutes. And when Bill is finally forced out of the gates of the mansion, there were exactly 70 minutes remaining in the film. 70, 20, 70. The movie folds in on itself.
It's architectural filmmaking, and the narrative mirrors that math. Bill's journey out into the night mirrors his journey back the next day. He goes to his office, his dead patient's apartment, the prostitute's apartment, the jazz club, the costume store, and then the mansion.
Yes.
The next day, desperate for answers, he revisits those exact same physical locations in a panicked, mirrored sequence.
It's brilliant.
But okay, I have to play devil's advocate here. I know Kubrick was a notorious perfectionist, taking hundreds of takes for a single shot. But couldn't the stilted dialogue just be, well, bad writing? Sometimes the clunky line is just a clunky line. Are we projecting genius onto a script that maybe just needed another draft?
That is the natural reaction, for sure. But you have to look at how the dialogue functions as meta-commentary. Kubrick is speaking directly to the audience through the character's awkwardness. Take the scene where Bill is in the prostitute Domino's apartment.
Okay.
They're awkwardly standing in her kitchen, about to negotiate her price. Bill shifts uncomfortably and asks, "So do you suppose we should talk about money?"
Which, purely on a plot level, is him asking for her hourly rate.
But on a metatextual level, Kubrick is breaking the fourth wall without looking at the camera. He is prompting you, the viewer. He is saying, look past the naked bodies. Stop obsessing over the erotic thriller marketing. What we should be talking about here is money. The real horror of this film is capitalism and commodification.
Right.
And how does Domino reply? She says, "I'd rather not put it into words." This is Kubrick telling the audience that he prefers to communicate his themes visually, bypassing verbalized pigeonholing. He's handing you the interpretive key to the movie inside the movie.
He's handing us the instruction manual. And speaking of visual communication, the mirrors themselves are everywhere. You can barely find a scene without a reflective surface.
And how the characters interact with those mirrors tells you everything about their psychology. Alice is seen looking directly into mirrors frequently. She is constantly validating her identity, confronting her physical reality, and facing her desires head-on.
She looks right at herself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Bill, look at his introductory shot. He has his back to the camera, peeking out a window through Venetian blinds, while his reflection is visible in a dark, distorted mirror next to him.
He's hiding from himself. He's looking through the horizontal slats of the blinds, exactly like he's looking through the eye holes of a mask. He absolutely refuses to look at his true self.
And sprinkled throughout these mirrored, heavily decorated environments are very specific ancient symbols. Dobrinsky's essay highlights the constant, subtle presence of the eight-pointed star in the background of the film.
You see it prominently in the architecture and lighting at Victor Ziegler's party, right?
Yes, that is the Star of Venus, also known as the Star of Ishtar. It originates from ancient Assyrian and Babylonian cultures that worship the goddess of fertility and war. Venus, of course, is the Roman goddess of love, beauty, desire, and sex. It is a symbol of overwhelming female power.
Wow.
Alongside it, you see five-pointed stars or pentagrams, hidden in the Christmas decorations at Ziegler's mansion, in the neon signs at the diner, and painted on the walls in the toy store at the end.
So you have these ancient esoteric symbols of female sexuality and occult power quietly observing these modern wealthy New Yorkers. Which begs a massive question. If Bill is wandering through a world owned by someone else, who exactly is the top of that food chain?
That's the real question.
Like, who is actually pulling the strings at Victor Ziegler's party and funding the rituals at the Somerton mansion?
This is where the film's obsession with ruling class decadence comes into sharp focus. Bill Harford is a doctor. He makes a very good living. He lives in a beautiful Central Park West apartment. He genuinely believes that his money, his good looks, and his medical degree give him access to the upper echelons of society.
And his name is a dead giveaway. He is literally Dr. Bill, like a dollar bill. He's a walking currency pun. He is money made flesh.
But the stark, humiliating reality that the film exposes is that Bill is not part of the elite. He is merely a mid-level servant to the ultra-rich. He is an instrument to be used and discarded.
So true.
When Victor Ziegler, a billionaire, has a prostitute overdose in his massive bathroom during his Christmas party, he doesn't call an ambulance. He doesn't want the police or the press. He calls his buddy, Dr. Bill, to quietly run upstairs, administer aid, and clean up the mess. Bill thinks he's a guest of honor. In reality, he's a high-end janitor for the ruling class.
And Kubrick shows us how this toxic power dynamic trickles all the way down to the street level. Remember the scene where Bill is walking down the street at night feeling sorry for himself, and he gets physically bumped and harassed by a group of aggressive, homophobic frat boys?
Yes, and pay close attention to the wardrobe in that brief scene. What are those boys wearing?
They are wearing Yale University varsity jackets.
That is not a wardrobe department accident. Yale University is the home of Skull and Bones, one of the most famous, exclusive, and powerful secret societies in American history. It was founded in 1832.
Wow.
Its alumni list is a staggering roster of presidents, Supreme Court justices, Wall Street power brokers, and the founding directors of the CIA. According to the historical text we're using, it's an organization allegedly bound by bizarre initiation rituals, mutual sexual blackmail, and extreme lifelong loyalty to the ruling class.
Which is, if you're listening to this on your commute or walking around your neighborhood, think about the logos on your clothes right now. We constantly broadcast our alignment to power structures we don't even fully understand. Kubrick is connecting these drunk, street-level bullies directly to the highest corridors of global power. They are the future Victor Zieglers. And the film goes even further into modern power structures, specifically making connections to Scientology.
This is a vital, albeit controversial, connection. Tom Cruise was, at the time of filming, and remains today, a highly dedicated, very public advocate and high-ranking member of the Church of Scientology.
Right.
The film makes several incredibly specific nods to the origins of that organization. For example, when Alice finally details the man in her consuming sexual fantasy, she specifically notes he was a naval officer. L. Ron Hubbard, the controversial founder of Scientology, had a highly mythologized background as a naval intelligence officer.
Hold on, let me push back on this a bit. Is it possible we are reading way too much into this? I mean, a naval officer is a classic romance novel trope.
That's true, it is.
And the other big connection people make is the rainbow imagery. People point out that the code name for L. Ron Hubbard's top-secret base in California in the 1970s was Over the Rainbow. And in the film, Bill rents his costume at a store called Rainbow Costume Rental, and the models at the party ask to take him to where the rainbow ends.
Yes, they do.
But rainbows are universal symbols. Are we sure Kubrick, a famously meticulous but ultimately narrative-driven director, was taking petty, subliminal shots at his lead actor's religion? Or is this just apophenia, us finding meaningful patterns in random noise?
It's a crucial distinction to make, honestly. Apophenia is a real danger in film analysis. However, with Kubrick, the density of the overlap makes coincidence mathematically improbable. The costume shop isn't just called Rainbow. The signage clearly shows the costume rental is located directly above a store called Under the Rainbow.
Oh.
It is a multi-layered physical location. When you combine the naval officer, the specific rainbow phrasing, and the overarching theme of a powerful, secretive, heavily funded cult that uses blackmail to control its members, well, the thematic parallels to the criticisms often levels against Scientology are impossible to ignore.
So it's deliberate.
Kubrick isn't taking cheap shots. He's utilizing the very real cultural anxieties surrounding his lead actor to deepen the dread of the film.
That makes a lot of sense. And layered right on top of the Skull and Bones and Scientology references is this deep, pervasive Masonic imagery.
The Freemasons are one of the world's oldest and most scrutinized fraternal organizations. Look at the very first shot of the film again. Alice is naked, but look at the architecture framing her. She is standing perfectly centered between two classical fluted columns, a direct visual echo of the twin Masonic pillars, Boaz and Jachin, that guard the entrance to Masonic temples.
Right.
And she is standing under a window blind that has been pulled up to form a perfect glowing triangle.
The all-seeing eye hovering over the pillars. The pyramid. It's the back of the dollar bill framing Dr. Bill's wife.
Precisely. But here is the critical insight. This occult imagery intersects brutally with the film's relentless theme of misogyny. The film argues that inside these ancient and modern power structures, women are treated strictly as objects to be leased, consumed, or discarded to protect the men in charge.
Absolutely.
Look at the women Bill encounters. Alice is a beautiful trophy wife whose complex inner life and fantasies are completely dismissed by her husband. Domino is a streetwalker whose body is literally for sale by the hour. Mandy is a disposable plaything for Victor Ziegler, who ends up dead in the morgue to protect his reputation.
Yeah.
And the costume shop owner's daughter is a vulnerable teenager being prostituted by her own father to men in monkey suits.
They are all commodities in a marketplace run by men. But hearing all this, the Masonic pillars, the pentagrams, Yale, Scientology, the billionaire cabals, it makes me wonder, is Kubrick trying to validate those insane internet conspiracy theories about the Illuminati? Because when you stack it all up, it sounds like a fever dream from a dark corner of the internet.
It sounds like it, yeah, but the Dobrinsky essay explicitly refutes that idea.
Yeah.
Kubrick is not endorsing conspiracy theories, he is satirizing conspiracism.
Okay.
He is exploring the psychological root of these theories. He's showing that classism, sexism, and anti-Semitism stem from our own unacknowledged fears of powerlessness. He's showing how everyday people, like Bill and Alice, unknowingly worship and mimic these corrupt power structures.
Oh, I see.
They buy into the aesthetics, the fashion, and the values of the ultra-rich, completely blind to the fact that to the people at the very top, Bill and Alice are just as disposable as Domino the prostitute.
They are aspiring to join a club that views them as nothing more than a battery to power their own wealth. It is a chilling thought. But Kubrick doesn't just critique this through the plot or the set dressing. He literally casts the movie to reflect a funhouse mirror of reality, intentionally blurring the lines between the actors' real lives, the characters on screen, and ancient myths.
This is where the depth of Kubrick's obsessive, almost psychotic level of casting becomes truly staggering.
I love this part.
Let's revisit the scene where Bill goes to the apartment of his dead patient, Lou Nathanson. The patient's grieving daughter, Marion, suddenly confesses her love to Bill. Bill, awkward and emotionally stunted, rejects her. Moments later, Marion's actual fiancé arrives at the apartment. His name is Carl.
And Carl is played by an actor named Thomas Gibson.
Now, at the time, Thomas Gibson was primarily known as a television actor, starring in the sitcom Dharma and Greg. Why would Stanley Kubrick cast him in this incredibly specific, tense scene opposite Tom Cruise?
Right, it seems random.
Because Thomas Gibson was born on the exact same day, the exact same month, and the exact same year as Tom Cruise, July 3, 1962.
You are kidding me. That is not a coincidence.
It gets much stranger. They have very similar physical builds, similar facial structures, and similar dark hair. But in the film, Kubrick styles Carl's hair to be parted on the exact opposite side of his head as Bill's. When they stand face to face in that apartment, they are literal mirror images of each other.
But how does that actually impact the viewer? I mean, nobody sitting in a theater in 1999 knew Thomas Gibson's birthday.
They didn't consciously know it, but it triggers the uncanny valley. By casting Cruise's literal astrological and physical double as the man who is stepping in to marry the woman who just threw herself at Bill, Kubrick is subliminally unnerving the audience.
Wow.
Even if you don't know the trivia, your brain registers the biological symmetry. It makes Bill's replacement in that room feel inevitable, like he's fighting fate. It creates a profound sense of unease.
And the names themselves carry massive weight. Let's talk about the etymology of the characters, because the sources dig deep into this.
The name Thomas originates from the ancient Aramaic word coma, which literally translates to twin. So both Tom Cruise and Thomas Gibson possess a name meaning twin. Furthermore, Gibson's character is named Carl Thomas. The name Carl originates from a Germanic word meaning free man.
So his name, Carl Thomas, essentially translates to Freemason.
Let's look at Bill's billionaire friend, Victor Ziegler, played by the legendary director and actor Sidney Pollack. Victor comes from Latin, meaning winner or conqueror, and Ziegler comes from the German word Ziegelbrenner, which means brickmaker.
A maker of bricks, a mason, a Freemason, and wait a second, brickmaker, Kubrick.
Yes. Kubrick is embedding his own name into the architect of the conspiracy. The layers of naming are relentless. Let's peel back the mythological layer. Bill and Alice's young daughter is named Helena. Helena is a direct derivative of Helen, as in Helen of Troy.
The most beautiful woman in the ancient world, whose abduction or elopement, depending on which myth you read, sparked the Trojan War and the destruction of an empire.
And Helen of Troy was the daughter of Zeus, but she also has incredibly strong mythological ties to Venus, the goddess of love, whose 8-pointed star we see glowing in the background throughout the film. Later, in the climax of the toy shop, we see a box for a doll named Carlotta Jr.
I remember seeing that box in the background. Who is Carlotta?
Carlotta links directly to Carlotta Grisi, the famous 19th century Italian ballerina, best known for originating the title role in the ballet Giselle. And what is Giselle about? It is a story about a beautiful, innocent young peasant girl whose heart is broken, and she is ultimately destroyed by a deceitful nobleman operating in disguise.
Which perfectly maps onto Mandy, the young woman who sacrifices herself at the orgy and later overdoses. She is destroyed by the disguised wealthy elites at the mansion.
Furthermore, Charlotte, a variant of Carlotta, is the name of the tragic mother in Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita, a novel that Stanley Kubrick himself adapted into a film in 1962. So Carlotta Jr. is a subtle, horrifying nod to Lolita, a young girl whose innocence is preyed upon and consumed by an older, manipulative man.
The sheer volume of doubles in the names of the women Bill encounters is staggering, too.
There's Marion, the grieving daughter, and Marie, the actress who plays her. There's Gail, the model at Ziegler's party, and Gail, a common spelling variant. There's Amanda, who goes by Mandy, and Domino, the prostitute. Both names have 6 letters and identical consonant structures.
It proves that this entire film operates as a slipstream fantasy. It's not strict realism, it's what psychologists call the Jungian shadow.
Exactly.
Imagine you have a locked basement in your mind where you shove every dark urge, every selfish thought, every sexual deviation, and every deep-seated insecurity you're too ashamed to admit to yourself. Kubrick is essentially unlocking Bill's basement and letting those monsters walk around freely on the neon-lit streets of New York as physical people.
Yeah, they're fragments of his own psyche.
But at a certain point, I have to ask, does the audience even need to know this? Isn't this just a genius director playing 6-dimensional chess with himself in a locked room? Does it matter that Ziegler means brickmaker if 99% of the audience misses it?
It's a very fair pushback. Consciously? No. The audience does not need to know a single piece of this etymological trivia to follow the basic plot of a jealous husband wandering the city.
Right.
But Kubrick believed devoutly in the power of the subconscious.
Right.
Think of Kubrick's subliminal details like carbon monoxide in a room. You can't see the individual molecules. You can't smell it. You aren't consciously aware you are breathing it in. But the longer you sit in the room with it, the heavier your limbs feel, the more your heart races, and the more paranoid you get.
Wow, that is a great analogy.
You don't need to consciously spot the pentagrams or translate the German surnames to feel the overwhelming poison of the atmosphere. The incredible density of these connections creates an environment of total, inescapable design. You feel deep in your bones that nothing is random, and that makes you feel trapped.
That makes perfect sense. The weight of the world building is the point, not the individual trivia. But this design wasn't just pulled from dictionaries and Greek myths. Kubrick pulled it from the darkest corners of his own life and from the history of Hollywood itself. Let's look at the meta-cinematic moments because they are staggering. For instance, while Bill is in the prostitute Domino's apartment, his cell phone rings.
Right.
It's his wife, Alice, checking in. She is sitting safely at home watching television. And the specific movie playing on her TV is clearly audible.
It is Bloom in Love, a 1973 film directed by Paul Mazursky.
And Bloom in Love is specifically a movie about a divorce lawyer whose wife leaves him after catching him cheating. The movie's theatrical poster tagline was literally a love story for guys who cheat on their wives.
So consider the layers of that moment. Alice is watching a movie about a cheating husband while talking on the phone to her own husband, who is currently standing in a prostitute's bedroom actively trying to cheat on her.
It's a fractal of infidelity, and the connection goes even deeper into Kubrick's past. Paul Mazursky, the director of Bloom in Love, actually acted in Stanley Kubrick's very first feature film, Fear and Desire, back in 1953. Kubrick is weaving his own personal cinematic history into the fabric of Bill's marital crisis.
And that's not the only horror movie reference. There is a massive visual nod to Roman Polanski's 1968 masterpiece, Rosemary's Baby.
In the final scene, as Bill and Alice are wandering through the brightly lit toy store, their daughter Helena runs ahead to look at an antique baby carriage. That carriage is a near-exact visual match to the iconic, ominous black baby carriage featured heavily on the promotional posters for Rosemary's Baby.
Which is another film set in New York City about a relatively normal, upwardly mobile Manhattan couple who literally sacrificed their own child to a satanic cult composed of the wealthy, elderly elite in order to secure their social status and career success.
The parallels are horrifying. Both films deal with urban paranoia, the insidious commodification of women's bodies, and the terrifying power of hidden elite cults operating behind the doors of luxury Manhattan apartments. And then there's the music. The music in Eyes Wide Shut is iconic, especially that haunting, plinking piano motif that strikes like a hammer when Bill is wandering the streets.
Oh, that piece is called Musica Ricercata, composed by György Ligeti. Ligeti was a brilliant Hungarian-Austrian composer whom Kubrick had used before in 2001, A Space Odyssey and The Shining. But here is where the biographical mirroring becomes genuinely eerie. Ligeti's parents were medical doctors. Their names were Dr. Sandor Ligeti and Dr. Ilona Ligeti.
Sandor and Ilona.
Yes. And in the film, the creepy Hungarian man who aggressively tries to seduce Alice at the Christmas party while her husband is upstairs is named Sandor Savost. And Victor Ziegler's wife, who briefly appears to greet the Harfords, is named Ilona.
You cannot make that up. Why would Kubrick encode his composer's parents into the names of the corrupt elites in his movie?
Because the entire film is an exercise in projection. Kubrick is projecting his own life and the lives of his collaborators onto the screen. Bill and Alice Harford are, in many ways, based on Kubrick's own parents. Kubrick grew up in New York. His father, Jock Kubrick, was a highly successful Jewish medical doctor, and his mother, Sadie, was a highly intelligent artistic housewife who often felt trapped by her domestic role.
So Dr. Bill is a stand-in for his own father. But there's a much more tragic biographical connection here regarding Kubrick's own daughter.
This is the emotional core of the film's darkness. Stanley Kubrick had a daughter, Vivian. She was deeply involved in his life and workness. She famously shot the behind-the-scenes documentary for The Shining when she was just a teenager, and she composed the entire score for Full Metal Jacket under a pseudonym.
Oh, wow.
They were incredibly close, but by the time Eyes Wide Shut was going into production in the late 1990s, Vivian had fallen deeply into the Church of Scientology.
And she completely estranged herself from the family.
She cut all ties. Kubrick was profoundly heartbroken. He wrote her a desperate 40-page letter begging her to come back, to speak to him, but she refused. He died without ever reconciling with her. So when you look at Eyes Wide Shut, a film starring Tom Cruise, Hollywood's most famous and powerful Scientologist, featuring a plot about a wealthy, secretive, heavily guarded cult that preys on young women and demands absolute silence, it becomes a profoundly personal exorcism.
That is so sad.
The fear of losing a daughter to a powerful, shadowy organization wasn't just a plot device, it was Kubrick's literal waking nightmare.
He is working through his deepest trauma right there on the screen. And this brings us to the Rothschild connection, which addresses the very real, often toxic accusations of anti-Semitism that usually surround discussions of elite global cults.
This is a highly nuanced and dangerous part of the film's architecture that Kubrick handles brilliantly. The exterior of the Somerton mansion, the imposing Gothic estate where the masked orgy takes place, is actually Mentmore Towers in the United Kingdom. Mentmore Towers was built in the 1850s by the Rothschild family.
The incredibly wealthy Jewish banking family that has been the target of unhinged anti-Semitic conspiracy theories for over a century.
Exactly. And the connections multiply. Bill's patient, who dies at the beginning of the film, setting the whole plot in motion, is named Lou Nathanson. Mentmore Towers was built by the son of Nathan Rothschild. So Bill literally leaves the house of Nathanson and travels to a house built by Nathan's son. Now, Kubrick himself was of Jewish descent, but his wife, Christiane, came from a very different background. She was the niece of Veit Harlan, a German film director who made horrific, explicitly anti-Semitic Nazi propaganda films during the Third Reich, including the infamous Jude Seuss.
So Kubrick is standing directly at the intersection of his own Jewish heritage and his wife's Nazi family history.
And he uses this geographical and historical tension to satirize and dismantle bigotry. The character of Victor Ziegler represents the ultimate corrupt, wealthy art hoarder who controls society from the shadows, a trope that has been violently weaponized against Jewish people in propaganda for decades. In fact, during the Holocaust, a real-life Nazi official named Adolf Ziegler was put in charge of identifying and confiscating so-called degenerate art from Jewish collectors.
And here is the masterstroke. He casts Sidney Pollack to play Victor Ziegler. Sidney Pollack, an incredibly famous, visibly Jewish man.
Yes. By intentionally casting a Jewish actor to play a character named Ziegler, a name historically associated with Nazi art theft, who embodies these grotesque, elite stereotypes, Kubrick is short-circuiting the conspiracy theory. He is forcing the audience to confront their own ugly biases.
Right.
He is saying, you want to believe the world is run by a Jewish cabal? Fine, I'll show you the stereotype. But by layering it so thickly, he exposes the absurdity of it. He is showing that greed, corruption, and the exploitation of human bodies are not tied to an ethnicity or a religion. They are tied to power, class, and the hoarding of wealth.
It is a dizzying high-wire act. All of this obsessive, deeply personal, heavily encrypted world-building brings us to the tragic reality of the film's completion. What actually happened in the editing room after Kubrick died? Because the myths surrounding his death are almost as famous as the movie itself.
Stanley Kubrick died of a massive heart attack in his sleep on March 7, 1999. This was just days after he screened what he considered the final, completed cut of the film for Warner Bros. Executives Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman.
And almost immediately, the rumors started flying. The conspiracy theories that Warner Bros. Panicked at what they saw, that they stepped in and butchered the film, that they removed crucial frames of the orgy scene to hide genuine Illuminati secrets that Kubrick was trying to expose, and that he was murdered to stop the film's release.
It became one of the most persistent urban legends in cinema history, right up there with the cursed set of The Exorcist. But the truth, as revealed by scholars in the Kolker and Abrams archive, and verified by that Reddit post analyzing the actual post-production notes, is far more mundane and, frankly, much more human.
I pored over that Reddit archive we have in the stack. It's a literal to-do list from the editing room, dated March 13th, 1999, less than a week after he passed.
And what does it reveal? The undeniable truth is that not a single frame of footage was removed from the film after his death. The studio did not censor his vision. The notes are highly technical and incredibly dry. They outline the need to remove negative film scratching digitally. They discuss placing specific fades and dissolves where Kubrick had marked them. They detail the completion of ADR, which is actors re-recording dialogue in a studio that wasn't captured cleanly on set.
The notes are obsessed with audio. Kubrick was manipulating the ambient sound of Bill's footsteps on the New York streets to create this overwhelming sense of isolation. But my absolute favorite note on the entire historical document is just 4 blunt words regarding the most infamous scene in the movie, Fix Music and Orgy.
It is hilarious in his bluntness.
Yeah.
Affix Legetti's at L.I. Gates, add atmosphere to Bill's office. It completely debunks the conspiracy.
Huh.
The studio didn't silence him. This was his vision, right down to the atmospheric hum of a doctor's office.
Which brings us to the culmination of that vision, the final scene, the bright, chaotic toy store.
Bill and Alice, exhausted from their psychological ordeal, take their daughter Helena Christmas shopping. After wandering through the dark, Gothic mansions and neon-lit streets, they are suddenly bathed in harsh, fluorescent light. They surround their daughter with massive amounts of brightly colored, mass-produced, capitalist plastic junk.
And the store is littered with visual echoes of the nightmare they just survived. It's like the dream is bleeding into the waking world.
Look behind Alice. There is a shelf full of large stuffed tigers. This exactly matches the stuffed tiger we saw resting on the bed of Domino, the prostitute. There is a prominent stack of board games called Magic Circle. This is a nod to the ritual magic of the masked orgy, but Magic Circle also happens to be the colloquial real-world name for the 5 most prestigious, powerful corporate law firms in London.
The lawyers who protect the elite. And then the ambiguity of the film peaks. 2 creepy older men dressed in long, formal coats are browsing in the toy store.
And if you look closely at their faces, they are the exact same 2 men who were sitting silently at Victor Ziegler's Christmas party earlier in the film. They are the henchmen, the watchers of the elite.
Helena sees them, and she seems to walk off in their direction, completely fascinated by them. And Bill and Alice, they don't panic. They just casually pat her on the back and keep talking to each other.
This is the crux of the film's deeply unsettling ending. What is actually happening here? Are Bill and Alice sacrificing their daughter to the elite? Have they decided that the only way to survive in this ruthless capitalist system is to numb themselves, turn a blind eye, and offer up their child to the power structure to maintain their comfortable Manhattan lifestyle?
Just like the Rosemary's Baby carriage implies.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it a profoundly happy ending? Think about the mechanics of a dream. Now that Bill and Alice have confessed their darkest secrets to each other, now that they are finally awake to the reality of the world and their own desires, do the demons lose their power?
Yeah, I never thought of it that way.
Are those 2 men no longer sinister henchmen, but just harmless old guys shopping for toys, completely stripped of their aura because Bill is no longer living in a fearful, insecure dream state?
That is the ultimate paradox. The monsters are either winning or they've been reduced to regular old men, and it leads to the final, unforgettable word of the film. Alice tells Bill there is only one important thing they need to do right now, and she looks at him, dead in the eye, and says, "Fuck."
It is the ultimate punctuation mark on Stanley Kubrick's career. his final cinematic statement.
Is it cynical? Is she saying the world is entirely corrupt, the elite control everything, we are just animals, so let's just go home and engage in base, meaningless physical urges? Or is it hopeful?
Many interpret it as profoundly hopeful, perhaps the most hopeful moment in any Kubrick film. Alice is tearing down the architecture we just spent 2 hours analyzing. She's stripping away the masks, the societal expectations, the obsession with money, and the psychological cults we build in our own minds.
Right.
She is demanding a return to raw, honest, vulnerable human connection.
Hmm.
She is saying, let's stop fantasizing about naval officers and beauty queens. Let's stop pretending we are something we aren't, and let's be real with each other in the present moment.
And that brings it right back to you, listening to this. What does your toy store look like? When you've faced your darkest, most irrational fears, when your marriage or your life has been tested to its absolute breaking point, do you numb yourself with distractions? Do you walk into the bright lights and buy more plastic junk to feel safe? Or do you have the courage to look at the person right in front of you and reconnect with raw, uncomfortable honesty?
It is a profound question, and Kubrick leaves it entirely up to the viewer to answer for themselves.
What an incredible journey to get to that question. We've traveled from Arthur Schnitzler's hedonistic 1920s Vienna to the Masonic pillars of 1999 New York. We've walked through the uncanny mirror world of Thomas Gibson and Tom Cruise, decoded the Star of Venus, uncovered the heartbreaking biographical tragedy of Kubrick's own family, and read the literal editing notes left behind by a dying genius who obsessed over the sound of footsteps.
It is a masterpiece of total design. But I want to leave you with one final seed to water. Throughout this entire deep dive, we've talked about Dr. Bill stepping into a dream. We've talked about him being manipulated by wealthy elites, pushed around like a helpless plastic toy in a master toy maker shop.
A pawn on a very large board.
But consider the actual physical construction of the film. Kubrick deliberately filmed Tom Cruise walking on a treadmill in a studio in front of rear-projected, fake-looking street backgrounds. He intentionally pushed the film stock in the chemical baths to create hyper-colored, unnatural, glowing lights. He specifically instructed the actors to deliver their lines stiltedly, to repeat themselves, and to occasionally stare directly into the camera lens, right at the audience.
Breaking the fourth wall.
What if Eyes Wide Shut isn't Dr. Bill's dream at all? What if Stanley Kubrick designed it to be your dream? You are the one sitting in the dark, staring at a glowing screen, being manipulated emotionally and visually by the ultimate master toy maker. He constructed the maze for you.
The question isn't whether Dr. Bill Harford ever wakes up from his dream. The question is, when the credits roll and the lights come up, do you?
That is the genius of Stanley Kubrick.
I asked you at the beginning to think about a movie that was actively watching you watch it. Kubrick built a mirror, and he's been waiting 25 years to see if you have the courage to look at your own reflection. Thank you for taking the plunge into the deep end with us today. Keep your eyes wide open.